A full-scale war in the Middle East has just exploded onto the global stage. What kicked off as a single, targeted strike has triggered a massive chain reaction, and it's shaking not just the region, but the world's economy, and opening up battlefields you would never expect. In this explainer, we're going to follow that ripple effect, from ground zero all the way out to the consequences that are now reaching every single one of us.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at the one strike that lit the fuse on this whole thing. Then, we'll dig into Iran's unprecedented retaliation and see how the conflict started spilling over its borders. From there, we're going to trace the shockwaves hitting the global economy, and we'll finish up on a totally new kind of battlefield, a war being fought over artificial intelligence.
You know, this whole crisis started with a military operation that was just staggering in its ambition. The goal here wasn't just to hit a few military targets. No, this was a full-on decapitation strike. The idea was to try and surgically remove Iran's entire leadership from the chessboard, all in one swift move. And the political goal behind the strike was just as absolute. President Trump made it crystal clear that diplomacy was off the table. He demanded nothing less than Iran's unconditional surrender, and flatly stated that absolutely no one from the current regime would be allowed to step in and take power.
The sheer scale of this initial attack was breathtaking. I mean, we're talking about strikes hitting at least 26 out of Iran's 31 provinces, basically blanketing the country. And by all accounts, they were devastatingly successful. The supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, was killed, along with a whole list of other senior government and military officials. But it didn't stop there. The campaign also systematically took apart Iran's ability to fight back, taking out around 200 air defense systems and sinking 17 warships, one of them as far away as Sri Lanka.
But of course, a strike of that magnitude was never, ever going to be the end of the story. It was just the beginning. Iran's response was swift, it was fierce, and it was on a scale the region had literally never seen before.
And this is a huge deal. For the first time in history, Iran unleashed a barrage of missiles and drones that went way beyond just Israel, which itself was hit with over 90 attempted strikes. No, Iran also targeted all 6 of the Gulf Cooperation Council nations, and the targets were incredibly strategic. U.S. military bases, civilian airports, and the very energy infrastructure that basically powers the global economy.
But while Iran was lashing out across the region, the cost of this war back home was becoming just devastating. For ordinary Iranian civilians, the human toll started to climb at a truly alarming rate.
Just to put this in perspective, in the first few days of the conflict alone, the Red Crescent confirmed that the death toll was as high as 1,332 people. And in the capital, Tehran, more than 100,000 people fled their homes, just trying to escape the violence.
And just heartbreakingly, the impact on the most vulnerable was catastrophic. UNICEF reported that at least 180 of those killed were children. In one single horrific incident, a strike hit a primary school in the city of Mideast while classes were in session. 168 young girls were killed.
And as you can imagine, that level of destabilization didn't stay contained within Iran's borders for long. The conflict acted like a match thrown on dry tinder, igniting other simmering tensions and pulling brand new players into the fight on entirely new fronts.
And we're seeing this fire spread in 2 major directions. Over in Lebanon, Hezbollah jumped into the war, which triggered massive Israeli strikes and forced over 100,000 people from their homes. And at the exact same time, on the incredibly volatile Afghan-Pakistan border, clashes just exploded, leading to at least 185 civilian deaths and displacing another 100,000 people there.
And just to give you a sense of the global posture here, even as the U.S. military was deeply engaged in the Middle East, it was also sending messages elsewhere. It actually expanded operations into South America, carrying out airstrikes against narco-terrorists in Ecuador at the request of their government.
Okay, so the consequences of this war aren't just being measured in military actions or casualty counts. They're being felt in wallets and on stock tickers all around the world, as this conflict sends these massive shockwaves right through the global economy. The epicenter of this whole economic crisis is right here, the Strait of Hormuz. This is the critical choke point for a huge chunk of the world's oil supply. So with it effectively blockaded and energy infrastructure across the region under attack, well, the markets were thrown into absolute chaos. And the result was immediate and dramatic. Just look at this. The price of WTI crude oil shot up by over 8.5%, almost overnight. This wasn't just a minor price fluctuation. This was a direct measure of the sheer panic and instability that was gripping the global energy market.
And that panic didn't stay confined to the energy sector. Oh no, it spread like wildfire to the broader financial markets.
All three major U.S. indexes took a nosedive, and the trading was so volatile that it actually caused IT disruptions and outages at several major brokerages. The system itself was struggling to keep up.
And that brings us to our final ripple. And honestly, this one reveals a completely new kind of conflict. It's not being fought on the ground or in the air, but behind the scenes, in the high-stakes world of advanced technology.
So, to understand what happened here, we first need to get this key term, supply chain risk. This is a formal label the Pentagon can slap on a company. It effectively says, we think you're a security risk, and it gives the government the power to cut any and all defense contracts with them.
Well, that's exactly what just happened to the major AI company Anthropic. See, the Pentagon wanted to use its advanced AI for fully autonomous weapons systems, specifically for the new Golden Dome missile defense. But Anthropic has its own strict ethical rules that forbid that kind of use. So when they said no, the Pentagon's response was to designate them a risk and sever all ties. It's a stunning, totally unprecedented public clash between a tech giant and the U.S. military.
So when you step back and look at the whole picture, from a decapitation strike to massive missile barrages, from widening proxy wars to economic chaos, and now a fight over the ethics of AI, it's clear this conflict is being fought on all fronts at once, and it really leaves us with a critical question to think about. As all these different kinds of battlefields, traditional, economic, and technological, all start to merge together, what does the future of global conflict even look like?